Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you are well. I'll tell you who is not doing well, and that would be Joe Biden. that I can tell you for sure. Wow. If CNN, the mainstream media, the Democrats were wondering, or if they were trying to convince the public that Joe Biden was all there mentally, we've gotten to the point where it's completely obvious. And what I want to talk about at the end of this video is how pretty much the main takeaway from the debate last night for me actually pertains to a potential stock market crash. And I'll tell you at the end of this video how I'm actually connecting those dots. But the first main takeaway that I had from I didn't watch the whole, there's no way I could watch the whole thing. I'm sure most of you have seen we'll call them the lowlights from the actual debate, if you want to call it that. But the first takeaway that I had from watching some of the clips and whatnot, it was Ronald Reagan. Because for the younger viewers on the live stream right now, for Josh, they've probably never ever heard Ronald Reagan speak. I'm sure they read about him in the history books. But at the time, this was, I believe, the 1984 debate, there was quite a question around Ronald Reagan's age. You had a very similar narrative to Biden from the standpoint of, is he mentally fit to run a country? Does he have the stamina to run a country? And I remember seeing some of the clips from the debate with, I believe it was Mondale in 1984, and just comparing Ronald Reagan in 1984 to Joe Biden in 2024. And what was astonishing is how the mainstream media was asking those questions of Ronald Reagan, which I think were appropriate. But what's astonishing is how they're not, or prior to this debate, how they weren't asking those same questions about Joe Biden when you contrast the two. Let me show you what I'm referring to. We're going to go over and watch this clip. And for the young people, this was 1984, Reagan versus Mondale. And just compare, and remember, the mainstream media is questioning Reagan on his age, his mental ability, and his stamina. And compare Reagan to Biden today.
I want to raise an issue that I think has been lurking out there for 2 or 3 weeks and cast it specifically in national security terms. You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale.
First of all, you can tell just by the way Ronald Reagan looks that he wasn't even close to Joe Biden. I would argue that Reagan in 84 was far more coherent than Donald Trump. I mean, you can just tell before he even says a word. You can tell just by kind of the look in his eye. But let's get back to it.
I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience. If I still have time, I might add, Mr. Truitt, that it was Seneca or it was Cicero, I don't know which, that said, if it was not for the elders correcting the mistakes of the young, there would be no state.
Mr. President, I'd like to head for the fence and try to catch that one before it goes over, but I'll.
So, Reagan, for the young people, was known for his quick wit. He was a former actor, and he displayed it right here. But I'm not talking about just his wit or his charm, but just how alert he is mentally. Totally coherent, to the point where he's obviously, that was off script. I doubt he practiced the line about Cicero or whoever it was. Just imagine Joe Biden being asked that exact same question. And what do you think the response would be? So my point here is not really to throw Biden under the bus, but to highlight the fact that the mainstream media was attacking Ronald Reagan for these things, but yet they've given Joe Biden a pass. A pass. This to me is absolutely shocking, but it tells the story as to how polarized and how I think immoral would be the right word for the mainstream media, how unpatriotic the mainstream media is right now. I also threw up a tweet. We're going to get to Twitter in a moment here, but it was just that simple picture that I'm sure many of you have seen of Obama, Julia Roberts, George Clooney, and Biden at a recent A-list celebrity kind of deal that they did for Joe Biden when they were raising funds. I think they raised $28 million in one night, some big sum or something like that. But keep in mind, this was just a few weeks ago. So these celebrities are knowingly trying to dupe the general public into voting for a guy they know has dementia or whatever. They know that he isn't fit to run a lemonade stand, let alone a country. And yet they are still trying to raise money for him. They're still trying to dupe, like I said earlier, the American public into voting for him. What does that say about their allegiance to the country? In my view, it says that they're extremely unpatriotic. They don't care about this country. In fact, in my view, it would mean the opposite, that they want to see the country crash and burn. They want to bring it to the ground. Because regardless of what your political views were on some of the hot topics, such as the border, abortion, Russia, Ukraine, inflation, regardless of what your opinion was, if you have some guy that has dementia and has his finger on the button for the nukes for World War III, that should be the one-dimensional voter, or that should be the one dimension that people vote on. The one-topic voter. It's, does the guy that has his finger on the red button for the nukes, does he have 100% of his mental faculties? That should be and everything should flow downhill from there. Because if the guy isn't mentally fit to make a decision when we are in this issue in the Middle East, when we're in this issue with Russia, Ukraine, let's not forget about China and Taiwan. When you have this type of geopolitical environment in the world, a very tumultuous, volatile geopolitical environment, we have to have a guy running the United States of America that at least knows what planet he's on. Regardless of what you think about abortion, about what you think about the border, what you think about inflation. Look, World War III, nuclear war, you're wiping out half the planet, 4 billion people. At the end of the day, no matter how much I'm into, let's say, economics, the monetary system, the banking system, no matter how much I'm into those and how important I think those economic policies are, they pale in comparison to starting a nuclear war or instigating or adding fuel to the fire. And obviously, Biden isn't in a mental position to not only make that decision, but to even have an opinion. And therefore, you know that he is being controlled by the deep state. And we know the deep state is part of the Malthusian cult. And we know the Malthusian cult, their number one objective is depopulation. It's anti-human. And you've got to, for those Trump fans out there, I would argue, or I would challenge you to reverse the roles. So what I mean by that is, say that you are adamant about closing the borders. Let's just use that one as an example, because that's obviously a hot button. Okay, let's just assume for a moment that everything that Trump was espousing was exactly what you believe in, but Trump obviously had dementia. And Joe Biden was for open borders, was pro-choice. He wanted to do another Green New Deal. He wanted UBI. He wanted to do all these things that you think would ruin the country. But you knew Joe Biden had, let's say, 120 IQ, and he was running on all 8 cylinders. Who would you vote for? You see? We can't be hypocrites about this. And in that scenario, I personally would vote for Joe Biden. Why? Because he's got his finger on the red button. And regardless of the narrative, the anti-Putin or whatever the narrative is, at the end of the day, you have to believe that he doesn't want to see 4 billion people perish. Now, I'm not saying that Joe Biden does right now, but I'm saying that he doesn't even know what time of day it is. So he's like a goldfish. I mean, his memory is like 4 seconds long. So he doesn't even know what he ate for breakfast. So obviously he can't make a decision on that. He doesn't even, I don't even know if he's in a place right now where mentally he understands what a World War III is or what a nuclear war is. In fact, I would really be curious to ask him that question. Joe Biden, what does World War III look like? Or what is a nuclear war? Just give me the definition of it and see if he could even do it. So I think that we are at a political point right now, unfortunately, where people are so emotionally charged. They are so irrational. They are so tribal that we could see, I mean, it's crazy to say, but we could see Joe Biden win if he's still running. Just like Fetterman. What was the guy's name? John Fetterman? I mean, 3 or 4 months into his campaign, I thought there's no way this guy, there's no way. I mean, I hate to be rude, but obviously the guy's not mentally fit to serve, but yet he won. You see, that just goes to show you where the American people are right now, or at least 50% of the people. They would rather the whole entire thing burn down than vote for the other team. That's when there is no rationality whatsoever. That what is driving the decision making is 100% pure emotion. And it's easy for the Trump supporters to sit there and throw stones at Joe Biden and say, there's no way you could vote for this guy or John Fetterman, but make sure that you're challenging yourself to reverse the roles and say that if Trump had dementia and Joe Biden was coherent, would you vote for Joe Biden? I can honestly say I would. All right, that's number 1 takeaway. Number 2 takeaway is the very low probability that Joe Biden is even the nominee. So let me switch up the screen share. Oh, you know what? Before we get there, I wanted to share one more thought on kind of how society has devolved. And I think it's something that we not only see in politics, but it's evident just in daytime TV. And if you go back and watch like those debates, you see that not only were both candidates mentally aware, but also there was very high level discussions. And it's just a reflection of society. And what you can see with the United States, it's just like Rome, how it is deteriorated, I guess, even morally and ethically since the 1970s, since the 1980s. Let me show you what I'm referring to. And I'm not going to play this clip, but for a lot of you on the live stream, I'm sure you remember the most popular daytime TV show, talk show, in the 1970s and into the early 80s. It was Phil Donahue. Now, the young people like Josh, they probably have no clue who Phil Donahue was. But Josh, he was the modern day version of, let's say, Oprah.
Well, I've seen Doug Casey on Phil Donahue. That's all that matters.
That's right. So what were the types of personalities, or what were the types of guests that Donahue would have on his show? There are people like Ayn Rand. Now, to be clear, Phil Donahue was a massive liberal, and he's still alive. But he would have a lot of politicians. He would have economists. Right here, I'm showing a clip where he has.
You would need to reshare your screen. If
no, I'm not going to play the clip. I'm not going to play the clip. It's just to show how he had Milton Friedman there up on stage with him talking about the book Free to Choose. Can you even imagine seeing Milton Friedman on daytime, or the equivalent of Milton Friedman on daytime television right now? Absolutely not. Now, the most popular. So what we've done is we've gone from Donahue in having these high-level thinkers on his show as guests, and that being the highest rated, most popular show, to today, I have no idea what the most popular daytime TV show is, but I know it's most likely something like the Jerry Springer Show. Now, he's not on TV anymore, I get it. But you guys can, for those of you who watch daytime TV, which I would assume a very low percentage of my audience does, but you can back me up on this one. This is typically what you're going to see on daytime TV right now. And I know you can't hear the audio, but you get everything.
You see it though, because you have the other video being shared.
Oh, they can't see it?
No.
Okay, we got to switch up the screen share anyway. Okay, so we've gone from Phil Donahue interviewing Ayn Rand, Doug Casey, Milton Friedman, to basically this. So you get it. And this is what look, they're going to put on TV whatever society wants, because it's all about ratings. And if society wants to watch an interview, a high-level intellectual interview between Phil Donahue and an economist, that's what's going to be on TV. And if society would prefer to watch two obese women fight over some dude that's most likely in prison, then that's what you're going to see on mainstream TV. And I think, to me, it's just interesting how we've seen the political debates devolve to the exact same degree. And quite frankly, our political candidates devolve to the exact same degree. I know a lot of people like Trump. And I think he's way better than Biden, obviously. But Trump is terrible. I mean, let's just be honest here. And in fact, I was having a discussion with my mom this morning, and she was saying, well, Trump's great because he's going to close the border. Look, any sane human being would close the border. I don't know if we can give him kudos for just doing something that is commonsensical. But the people deserve more. You've got politicians out there that I think are decent. Vivek, I think, is decent. RFK, I don't like everything he said, but he's way better than obviously Trump or Biden. But that's not what the people are voting for. So at the end of the day, we have to realize that the American society is going to get the politician they deserve. Now let's switch up the screen share again, because I want to get some feedback on the second point that I was making on how it's very unlikely that Joe Biden is the nominee. Now, I read this morning, they're saying that he's still going to run, his team, Joe Biden himself. But I think this is kind of a ploy, because they don't want to bring in the next candidate too early to allow the Republicans to have time to build up a lot of ammunition against this person. And I was reading Vivek earlier say he was making this point and articulating it well. And he was talking about how they want to bring someone in right at the specific time where they're still in the honeymoon phase going into the next debate or into the election. That made a lot of sense to me. But here I want to play a clip of Vivek on his thoughts last night, because I think he, he's a very good communicator. And I think he states kind of what we're all thinking very well. So Josh, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
To replace him.
The fact of the matter is, this man cannot continue as maybe make it to the end of this term as president of the United States. I have deep concerns for our own country, even for the next 6 months with this man in charge. When you think about the greatest threats that we have faced in our lifetime to the homeland of the United States of America, and that this is the man who's the commander-in-chief supposedly making those decisions, that should be frightening to every American. And I do think that we are due for a Democratic Party that has a reckoning ahead of it, to say that if this man is the best they could put up, that says everything you need to know about the modern Democratic Party.
But
And I think Trump came out unambiguously.
Do you think that Trump won this debate tonight? Do you think he performed how he went out there and did his job and convinced those undecided voters, including the 8% here in Georgia, that he is the guy for the job?
Trump could have not said a word. Literally. He could have just sat there in front of the mic and just did this, and he still would have won the debate. All you have to do to win a debate against Joe Biden is just let Joe Biden talk, and you win. So what kind of question is that?
I think he exceeded my already high expectations. He hands down won this debate. And the reason why is not only did Trump win it, but Biden lost it. Both those happened at the same time. Did he convince independents tonight? I think he actually did. The moments where he talked about, you know what my vengeance and retribution will be?
I don't think he convinced independents. I think independents just looked at Joe Biden and they're like, no way. Like, no, there's zero chance I vote for that guy. That guy should not be president of the United States. He should be in a care home for the elderly.
It will actually be success in this country. People saw, they tried to bait him into it. He stayed on his policy record. And I thought it was a beautiful thing. At the same time, he didn't compromise.
Okay, so he goes off and talks about Trump. So I thought he went into how he thinks the Democrats will bring someone in at the last minute. I thought he went into that in this clip as well, but apparently he doesn't. But let's go over, this is from The Guardian today, and they say who could replace Joe Biden. Here are 6 possibilities. So obviously Kamala is number 1. I also want to give a huge shout out.
You need to reshare your screen if you want us to see that as well.
Right. I want to give a huge shout out to my good buddy Doug Casey, because for those of you who listen to Doug's podcast, I think it's called Doug Casey's Take, which I would highly recommend. Doug called this at least 6 months ago, that Biden likely would not run for president.
I remember at dinner when we were with him in Argentina, he said that.
Oh, was he talking about that at dinner as well?
Yeah.
And I know, like I said, he's been talking about this on his podcast for like the last 6 months. So we have to give him a huge shout out and kudos to Doug for seeing this way, way, way in advance. But another thing that Doug said is he doesn't think it would be Kamala because she's so unpopular. So let's go back to the screen share. Josh, can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, good. So Kamala, number one, probably a higher probability than Biden, but still low probability. Gavin Newsom, probably a little higher. I think if I had to put my money on someone, it would probably be Newsom. And he's just a greasy used car salesman. I cannot stand Gavin Newsom, but that's neither here nor there. J.B. Pritzker. Now, I don't know who this person is. They say 59-year-old governor of Illinois. Oh, my gosh. Illinois is almost as much of a train wreck as California. He can flourish his credentials of having codified the right to abortion. Oh, geez. Declaring a sanctuary state for women abortion. Okay. He also has been strong on gun control, meaning that he wants to ban guns and legalize. Okay, great. So he wants you to be able to kill babies, smoke as much weed as possible, but whatever you do, don't own a gun. So we got that guy. Jeez, a Michigan governor. My goodness gracious. The Democratic Party doesn't have anybody better than this. This Dean Phillips, he seems to be a pretty level-headed guy. I don't know too much about him, but I've heard him in a couple podcasts, actually. And he seems to be kind of like a Vivek guy on the left. But again, he probably can't get any votes because society has just devolved into the real-life Jerry Springer show. But Gretchen, she's Michigan governor. Okay. Again, strict on gun laws, abortion. So let's kill babies. Let's make sure no one has a gun. Same thing here with this guy, Sherrod Brown. Okay, so there you go. If I had to choose one, it'd probably be Dean Phillips. But if I had to bet on someone, it's probably Newsom. So now let's go back to, or let's circle back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where the main takeaway for me about the election was the potential crash in the stock market. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, George, that's a little weird. How are you connecting those dots? I don't see any relationship whatsoever between the train wreck that was the debate last night and the potential for a stock market crash. Let's get into this article from CNBC, and I think you'll start to see how I'm putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Top Democratic fundraisers sound the alarm after Biden's debate performance. So look at some of these quotes. I mean, they're really shocking. Let me see if I can do a highlighter here. Yeah, cool. So these are his biggest supporters, Biden. They say, quote, disaster. And this is from a donor in the Hamptons. This is terrible. Worse than I thought possible. Everyone I'm speaking with thinks Biden should drop out. Again, those are quotes. Here's another one. Game over, said longtime Democratic campaign advisor who has been raising money for congressional leaders for over a decade and helped raise money for Biden in 2020. And they get stronger as we go down the article. Biden's got to leave. He's got to get out now. And if he doesn't get out, we are effed. We are effing crushed, said the advisor. They told this directly to CNBC. And I'm reading further in the article. An advisor of one of the Democratic Party's top mega donors called the debate an absolute train wreck for Biden. So then they go on to quote some of Biden's gaffes or his just lack of just lack of it wasn't that he didn't even answer the questions, that he couldn't even form a sentence. Like he was just rambling on about it was just like drivel. It was just like nonsense. It was basically like listening to the teacher in Charlie Brown. It was just wah, 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 wah. And then we did string some words together. They didn't even grammatically fit, which is one thing that CNBC points out right here. And keep in mind, CNBC they're not massively liberal, but they definitely lean left. And here's just a quote, I guess, if you want to call this a quote from Biden. I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we are going to do with more border patrol and more asylum seekers or officers, more asylum officers. And I thought it was actually kind of funny that whenever Biden would just spew this nonsense, Trump would just be like, he'd just have this look on his face like, huh? What? Huh? It's almost like that GIF of, was it John C. Reilly, I believe is the guy's name, that played opposite of Will Ferrell in Step Brothers and Talladega Nights. You guys know that GIF that I'm referring to. You see it on Twitter all the time where he's got the glasses and he's like, just totally confused. Like, what? What did he just say? I thought that was the best part of the whole debate. So what's my point? You guys know from watching my videos that I believe the stock market will go into a bear market, will crash. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but it's going to dramatically go down once the narrative changes. Because right now we're in this part of the cycle where bad news is good news. But that only lasts so long. It gets to a point where the bad news is so overwhelming that nobody can deny it. Nobody can deny it. And that's when the bad news becomes bad news. So we think back to the cerveza sickness, when the stock market is going up and up and up and up and up and up and up in January, February of March of 2020. And I'm sure back then, same thing. Oh, well, we have this, it could be something, but hey, well, that just means the Fed's going to drop rates. And if the Fed drops rates, we know what that means. Stock markets rip higher. But then all of a sudden, the news gets worse and worse and worse. So then it's like, oh my gosh, forget about the Fed dropping rates. The world might come to an end. Or this might throw us into an economic depression that would make the 1930s look like a party. That's when the bad news became bad news. And what happened to the stock market? Just right off a cliff. And what's interesting is you saw that happen in real time last night during the debate, not from a standpoint of economics, but from a standpoint of politics. Because this whole 4 years, even 2-3 months ago, the media and all the celebrities and all the people out there, the Democrats, they're making excuses for Biden. Oh, he's just got a lisp, or oh, he's just got a cold, or oh, he's just got kind of a stutter. You should be nice to the guy. No. He's 100% there mentally for sure. No question about that. This is just Fox News editing some clips, and he's had a long night. He's been up 48 hours straight. He's been dealing with Putin and Xi and all these things. That was the narrative they were trying to push. But last night, it completely changed. It got to the point where it was so obvious that even the people on CNN, even the people on MSNBC, even some of these large Democratic mega donors are saying, you know what, he's got to pull the plug. Like to do the patriotic thing, he's got to drop out of the race right now. That there is no question that Joe Biden is unfit to be president. We got to that point politically where instead of bad news being good news, bad news is now bad news, because it has become blatantly obvious to everybody, even his supporters, that he is totally incapable of running a country. So then the question, as it pertains to the stock market, is when do we get to that inflection point? What needs to happen? Does the unemployment rate need to go up to 4.5? Does the unemployment rate need to go to 5? What type of data do we need to see in order for the narrative to shift, just like we saw last night? I don't have the answer, but I think that's something that we should all be thinking about. That was my number one takeaway from the debate last night. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. And for you Americans out there, remember, you deserve better than either candidate that we saw last night. We'll see you on the next video.